Dr. Aishwarya Joshi, your mentor and teacher for MRCP. Today we are here for a revision session, the 5th session of the last minute revision, covering hematology, geriatric and respiratory medicine, dermatology and rheumatology. This is going to be an intensive hour and we are going to cover most of the things that are going to come in your examination. Hematology, we are going to cover anemia, hemolysis, malignancy, coagulation. Geriatric medicine, we are going to cover delirium, falls, dementia and frailty. Psychiatry, we are going to cover most important keynotes and drug emergencies. Dermatology, we are going to see certain emergencies that are part of medicine. Systemic science and cutaneous carcinomas. Rheumatology, we will be covering autoantibodies, vasculitis and approach to a hot joint. Out of the 200 questions, hematology is expected to have 9 questions in one day. So whenever we have a question on hematology, in MRCP, you will be getting a clinical scenario. You might get a clinical image or you might get a clinical lab investigation history. And on that basis, you have to analyze what exactly is the possible answer. So you will start with full blood count analysis. And if peripheral film is given, that is even better. The MCV and the blood film morphology will usually point to the diagnosis. If you see that anemia is there, either clinically or based on lab findings, you classify by MCV, that is mean corpuscular volume. You will identify whether it is microcytic, normocytic or macrocytic, and then by the mechanism, which you will be able to identify based on given history. Then hemolysis screen. In MRCP, raised LDH is equal to hemolysis or malignancy. So these two should be your first suspicion when the LDH is raised, along with rise in bilirubin. Now, an ideal hemolysis picture would be where there is a raised LDH, raised bilirubin, low haptoglobin, raised reticulocytes, and DAT testing. That is direct antigen testing. Direct antibody testing. Recognize hematological emergencies how? By understanding neutropenic sepsis, TTP, DIC, tumor lysis, and hyperviscosity syndromes. In neutropenic sepsis, clearly the patient will have low neutrophil count. He might have recently received chemotherapy or a transplant. The patient may or may not have fever and the counts may or may not be raised. TTP, again, it is a kind of hemolytic anemia. DIC, again, common in females with hemolysis. Tumor lysis, remember there is elevated potassium, low calcium. Hyperviscosity, one clinical significant feature is headache. Now you pair the antibody with the marker of the disease. We will see that in the next slides. Now one thing you need to remember, look at the bottom of the screen. If there is a microcytic anemia with low ferritin or low hemoglobin in anybody more than 55 years of age, find the source of GI blood loss. It has to be GI blood loss if it is anemia in a adult more than 55. Microcytic anemia causes are iron deficiency, thalassemia, and anemia of chronic disease. Anemia of chronic disease can have normocytic picture as well. Normocytic picture can occur in acute blood loss, chronic disease, hemolysis, and marrow-villi. Macrocytic, we all know B12 deficiency, folate deficiency, alcohol, liver disease, hypothyroid state, and myelodysplasia. B12 deficiency, if identified, it has to be treated with B12 of course, but should be given with folate in order to avoid subacute combined degeneration, because the metabolism is interconnected. Iron studies, ferritin is the key test. Whenever we want to establish iron deficiency anemia, we do ferritin more than transferrin saturation or free serum iron. One thing you need to remember, ferritin is a positive phase reactant, positive acute phase reactant, so it can rise in systemic inflammation. Microcytic, like we just saw, same thing written in the form of a chart. So whenever iron deficiency is identified, you have to find the source of iron loss, that is, find the source of bleeding. A normal or raised ferritin does not exclude iron deficiency if there is inflammation. A 62-year-old man has fatigue. Now, fatigue can be a symptom of any disease, any disease. But remember, in MRCP, fatigue points out towards two important things. One is anemia and one is liver disease. Remember, hemoglobin is 9.2, MCV is 71, ferritin is 6. No overt bleeding symptoms present. Fecal occult blood test is positive. What is the treatment? You start oral iron. You start with iron replacement with urgent investigation for GI malignancy, only blood transfusion, B12 injection, or bone marrow biopsy first. Like we just discussed, elderly individual, low hemoglobin, low iron. The answer is investigate for GI malignancy. We are replacing iron in this patient in order to prevent the symptoms of fatigue. But we have to rule out GI malignancy. Why? Iron deficiency anemia in older adult indicates GI malignancy, and it has to be excluded with colonoscopy and upper GI endoscopy. OGD refers to esophagogastroduodenoscopy and not only supplementation. Do not attribute it to diet without investigation in this age. Hemolytic anemia, you need to confirm hemolysis. How? By raised LDH and bilirubin, low haptoglobulin, and with the presence of reticulocytosis. Hemolysis refers to peripheral breakdown. So the bone marrow will respond with increased synthesis. Now, DAT positive refers to autoimmune situation. If it is warm antibodies, we treat with steroids. If it is a cold agglutinin, we keep the patient warm and we treat the underlying cause. This is direct antibody testing, or you can refer to Cohn's test. If it is DAT negative, then it could be hereditary spherocytosis, G6PD deficiency, presence of mechanical cardiac valve, or it could be microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, or presence of sickle cell disease. So this is also a condition of hemolysis, but without the presence of antibodies. In the peripheral film, you will be able, if you see spherocytes, then again there is possibility of autoimmune hemolytic anemia, hereditary spherocytes. Schistocytes, again microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. White cells are a feature of G6PD. Microangiopathic hemolytic anemia is identified with the presence of schistocytes and thrombocytopenia, because it is not only damaging the RBCs, it is damaging the platelets also because of passing through the micro blood vessels. And in this situation, you think of TTP, that is thrombocytopenic purpura, hemolytic uremic syndrome, and disseminated intravascular coagulation. These are the three things that you think of when there is microangiopathic hemolytic anemia with schistocytes and thrombocytopenia in the clinical scenario. I hope I am clear. So this is again a chart presentation of hemolytic anemia. You can see raised LDH, bilirubin, haptoglobulin fall, and reticulocytes as the features in hemolysis. Haptoglobulin is low. Why? Because the hemoglobin which releases from the broken RBCs binds to haptoglobin, and hence the free haptoglobin count is fallen. direct antibody testing is done in case of hemolysis. If it is positive, with warm antibodies, we treat with steroid. If it is a cold agglutinin reaction, then we treat it differently. And negative, we have already discussed. Now, a positive Coombs test or a direct antiglobulin test indicates immune-mediated hemolysis. You need to remember this. 35-year-old woman presents with fever, confusion, bruising, and dark urine. Platelets are 18,000. Fragmented RBCs are seen on the film. LDH is very high. Creatinine is raised with a normal coagulation screen. What is the diagnosis? Is it DIC, ATP, immune thrombocytopenia, hemolytic anemia from G6PD, or sepsis alone? I will clearly remove sepsis from here because there are no features here. Confusion, bruising, and dark urine indicates some amount of bruising indicates skin bleed, which could be due to thrombocytopenia. Dark urine could be due to release of either hemoglobinuria or bilirubinuria, right? This is TTP, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura. Why? Because there is microangiopathic hemolytic anemia as seen with schistocytes. Thrombocytopenia is there. Neurological symptoms are there, that is confusion. AKI is there with a normal clotting screen. So, this is TTP. The treatment is with urgent plasma exchange, and platelet transfusion should not be done. Why? Because if you give platelet, again it goes through the small blood vessels and gets destroyed. So there is no meaning. Plasma exchange is the treatment of choice. Coming to hematological malignancy and coagulation. Most important for MRCP, myeloma. Myeloma is represented with a mnemonic. We study it as CRAB. C is hypercalcemia due to bone lysis. Renal failure due to the protein getting accumulated as casts in the renal tubules. Anemia and bone lytic lesions. CRAB along with paraproteinemia is a feature of multiple myeloma. Next is leukemia. It could be acute, it could be chronic. If it is acute, in the peripheral smear, blasts may be seen. Marrow failure can happen. In chronic, CML is commonly asked where there is Philadelphia chromosome positive, and CLL where smear cells are there. Smear cells have to be seen in a picture because it commonly comes in the exam. Lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, where the Reed-Sternberg cells are the ideal cell types. Alcohol-induced pain is a feature of Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we have to differentiate it from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. ITP versus DIC. ITP idiopathic, there is low platelet and normal clotting screen. DIC, there is increased clotting time and fibrinogen less. Thrombophilia or venous thromboembolism. You have to find out if it is provoked, that is there an underlying cause, or unprovoked. This is a very important call for your exam. Bone pain, hypercalcemia, renal failure, anemia with paraprotein, or simply if they give you elevated total serum protein, it indicates multiple myeloma and it happens in elderly. The scenario will have individuals more than 65 years of age. 70-year-old has back pain, fatigue and constipation. Hemoglobin is 95, calcium is 3 millimoles, creatinine is raised, and there is rholeo formation on the peripheral blood film with an IgG paraprotein. Skeletal survey shows lytic lesions. The answer here is, it is clearly multiple myeloma. Calcium, ionic calcium is given here in millimoles. So you need to know the normal values, but the exam scenario will give you normal values, so don't have to worry. Okay, this is very clear. Now, prostatic mets are sclerotic and not lytic, if that is a confusion. 22-year-old known to have sickle cell disease presents with severe bone pain, fever, and low oxygen saturation with new bilateral pulmonary infiltrates on chest X-ray. What do you think is possible here? Now, most of you might be confused between simple painful crisis versus acute chest syndrome, right? And there are pulmonary infiltrates as well. Now, again, this brings a doubt whether we need to give fluids or not. This is acute chest syndrome. This acute chest syndrome is due to bony blood vessel occlusion due to sickling. This is treated with oxygen, analgesia, fluids, antibiotics, and exchange transfusion in severe cases. Okay, is that clear? We cannot just give an analgesia and discharge the patient. He has to be supplemented with oxygen. Next, a 60-year-old vegan has fatigue, sore tongue, numbness with unsteadiness. Hemoglobin is low with a high MC. There is loss of vibration and proprioception. What is the diagnosis? There is fatigue, sore tongue, this indicates glossitis, numbness with unsteadiness. Unsteadiness indicates ataxia, which is a sensory feature. Numbness, again a sensory feature. And this is associated with both alcohol excess and B12 deficiency. Here it is B12 deficiency due to subacute combined degeneration, where there is macrocytic anemia, dorsal column changes. Okay, very clear question. In your exam, you will have detailed big questions with lab findings. This is just a revision point. Now we move to geriatric medicine. We start with comprehensive geriatric assessment of medical, functional, and psychological and social domains. In an elderly, we need to focus on polypharmacy, psychological support. Atypical presentation, it could be infection, MI, which may present as false, delirium, or off legs. Polypharmacy, review with stop or start. Deprescribe the culprit drugs. The geriatric giants, that is immobility, instability, incontinence, impaired cognition. Frailty predicts adverse outcomes and guides sealing of care. We will understand what this is. Here is a given call, very broad statement. A sudden change in an older patient is delirium until proven otherwise. Okay, let's start with delirium. Delirium refers to acute fluctuating disturbance of attention. It's a global dysfunction and it has an underlying cause, or you can say a trigger. Delirium in elderly can be hyperactive as well as hypoactive. Hypoactive is typical in elderly. Now the causes have a mnemonic. It is pinch-me. Pain, infection, nutrition, constipation, hydration, medication, environment, electrolytes. You need to screen for 480 or CAMP is complementary alternative medicine. 480, I'll tell you what it is. Here we need to identify and treat the cause and reorientate the patient. Avoid sedation. Sedation can lead to respiratory depression. So unless the patient is under distress or a risk of trauma, sedation should be avoided. Okay. Coming to The call for delirium, hypoactive delirium, where the patient is quite drowsy and withdrawn, is typical in elderly and should be screened actively, and it can be multifactorial. So you need to find all causes and treat all causes. 84-year-old becomes acutely confused and agitated overnight on a surgical ward. She is normally independent, she is constipated, has not passed urine, has a temperature of 37.9 degrees Celsius. How do you treat the patient? Very clear? Assess for and treat the cause. Why? Acute fluctuating confusion. This patient has delirium, and we need to look for reversible triggers like retention of urine, constipation is there, infection, and any drugs that she might be taking. This temperature is mild fever, right? Sedation and restraint have to be the last resort, and this should not be labeled as dementia. Dementia is something related to memory in the absence of triggers. Coming to falls, multifactorial assessment is required, where you take history, review the medications given in the scenario. You measure the lying down and standing BP both. Gait and balance of the patient has to be checked in the clinic. Culprit drugs like sedatives, antihypertensives, anticholinergics, and hypoglycemics have to be identified. Postural hypotension, which is a drop of blood pressure, has to be measured, and it has to be checked whether they can be attributed to drugs or hydration status or autonomic diseases. Investigate syncope by doing ECG or Holter also. Consider arrhythmia, aortic stenosis if collapse is there without a warning. It could be even migraine. There are multiple causes of syncope. Then reduce the harm of the patient by counseling for strength or balance training, treating osteoporosis, looking for home support. Reviewing and reducing culprit medicine is the single most modifiable false risk factor. So polypharmacy has to be identified in elder. Same thing, put up in a chart. Look at this point here. This combines geriatrics with cardiology. So collapse without a warning, with exertional symptoms and ejection murmur, you have to look for aortic stenosis. And aortic stenosis is a degenerative feature. It is aortic sclerosis occurs with age, and in the elderly this can happen. 80-year-old has recurrent falls. Lying BP is 138/82. Standing BP is 108/64 with dizziness. So when he got up from lying to standing position, he had dizziness. He takes amlodipine, doxazosin, and a sedative at night. What is the treatment? Now more than one drug mentioned. Our focus has to go on polypharmacy. Right? So we review the medication for postural hypotension. Here doxazosin is a alpha-1 blocker. This can lead to hypotension. Symptomatic postural drop with multiple culprit drugs. Rationalize the medicines first. Address hydration and the reversible causes. Fludrocortisone is a later step once the drugs have been rationalized. Let's deal with dementia continensis failure. Dementia could be Alzheimer's, which is a long progressive course. Vascular, where there will be a history of stroke or TIA. Lewy body dementia, remember, always associated with visual hallucination and Parkinsonism. Frontotemporal dementia, frontal lobe, there is loss of cognition or loss of social behavior. Lewy body, antipsychotics can cause severe sensitivity reactions. In dementia, if we're giving antipsychotics, remember they come with sensitivity reaction. Okay, there are certain dementia mimics which are reversible. Those are B12 deficiency, thyroid disease, hyper and hypo both, depression, normal pressure, hydrocephalus. Continence, you have to assess whether it is urinary or GI incontinence. Avoid antimuscarinics because they can further impair cognition of the patient. End of life care and ceiling of care should be discussed early in advanced frailty. In Western countries, they usually take opinions of the elderly when they have their cognition in place as to how they want to be treated when they become dependent or when they are not conscious. So this is something called advance directive. So if the patient is told that I do not want to receive any intubation or I want DNR, so he will write it in early itself. And when the cognition is intact, only the advance directive will be addressed. The medical team or any other relative will have no say in decision making. A 76-year-old has fluctuating confusion, recurrent vivid visual hallucination, and Parkinsonian feature. To revise, Parkinsonian features are resting tremor, rigidity, bradykinesia. He was given haloperidol for agitation and became severely rigid and unwell. What could be the diagnosis? Clearly, it is Lewy body dementia. Haloperidol is an antipsychotic and it causes further cognitive impairment. Coming to psychiatry, it might sound very difficult, but in exam you may have 2 to 4 questions and they are going to be simple. They will have enough clinical background to guide towards the diagnosis. You assess the risk of the patient. In psychiatry, risk refers to risk of suicide or self-harm. Depression, screen for biological symptoms. SSRIs are the first-line treatment and look for serotonin syndrome when using SSRI. Psychosis, you first exclude organic and drug causes. Antipsychotics, you have to monitor the metabolic side effects. Serotonin syndrome versus neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Serotonergic drugs lead to clonus and hyperreflexia, and dopamine antagonists lead to rigidity with raise in creatine kinase. So you have to remember differentiation of serotonin syndrome from neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Next, when you are giving lithium and clozapine, it requires close monitoring because it has a very narrow therapeutic index. Clozapine has to be monitored with full blood count because it leads to bone marrow depression. Fever, rigidity, raised creatine kinase with an antipsychotic causes neuroleptic malignant syndrome. So the treatment is stopping the drug. Same thing put into chart. We will here clearly see how to differentiate serotonin syndrome from neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Serotonin syndrome is due to serotonergic drugs. It starts in hours. It presents with hyperreflexia, clonus and agitation. There are dilated pupils with diarrhea, and SSRIs are the causative agents. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome starts over days together. It presents with led by rigidity, raised creatine kinase, bradyreflexia, that is slow and held up reflexes, and this occurs with dopamine antagonists or dopamine withdrawal. And neuroleptic malignant syndrome presents with fever also. Remember that hypothermia with autonomic instability is more common in neuroleptic malignant syndrome than serotonin. So you stop the drug, cool the patient and give supportive care, that is hydration, oxygen, and treatment of parallel diseases. Clonus and hyperreflexia favor serotonin syndrome. Led by fragility favors neuroleptic malignant syndrome. 2 days after an antipsychotic dose increase, a patient develops high-grade fever led by frigidity, confusion, and autonomic instability. Creatine kinase is markedly increased. We know the diagnosis here is neuroleptic malignant syndrome very clearly, but I want to bring a focus on catatonia. What is catatonia? Can somebody answer? Okay, we'll discuss this at the end. Okay, now in psychiatry, always assess the risk of suicide, self-harm, and safeguard patient. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome occurs due to dopamine antagonist, presence with rigidity, and raised creatine kinase levels over days. Serotonin syndrome, it is with a serotonergic drug with clonus or hyperreflexia, occurs over hours of taking the drug. Lithium toxicity presents with tremor, ataxia, and precipitated with dehydration. Clozapine have to monitor full blood count. Let's come to dermatology, very important, and images may also come. Firstly, you need to describe the lesion. Where is the lesion? What is the distribution? Proximal. What kind of lesion it is? Whether it is plaque, which is well demarcated from the basal surface, vesicle, referring to a vesicle refers to packet formation, and color of the rash. Now you need to spot the emergency. In dermatology, it is a emergency if there is systemic involvement in the form of fever, hypotension, tachycardia, warmth, or discharge from the lesion. Stevens-Johnson syndrome, toxic epidermal necrolysis are the two most asked emergencies in dermatology. Others are erythroderma, which could be bacterial infections, eczema herpeticum, again a viral infection, necrotizing fasciitis, common in immunocompromised states. Drug rash, always read the scenario carefully to identify if any drugs are there which are triggering the rash. It could be mucosal involvement with pain in the skin. Stop the drug. And it has to be treated as Stevens-Johnson syndrome or toxic epidermal necrolysis. Mucosal involvement with skin pain refers to drug rash. Make a note of it. Pigmented lesions. Again, you apply ABCDE approach, that is airway, breathing, circulation, disability and exposure. Refer the suspected to melanoma evaluation urgently. So the poll here is a widespread blistering rash with mucosal involvement and skin pain. SJS or 10 is possible. You stop the given drug first and treat the patient with hydration, oxygen, and supportive care. Dermatological emergencies. SJS and 10. There is mucocutaneous loss, so it could involve the skin as well as all kinds of mucous membrane. Nikolsky sign will be positive and it is triggered by the drug. So you stop the drug and give us supportive care. Erythroderma, if more than 90% of the skin is red, then it is an emergency. You treat with fluid. There is a risk of infection and antibiotics are required. Eczema herpeticum, they present as painful monomorphic vesicles with a systemic upset. Treat with acyclovir or vanciclovir. Necrotizing fasciitis presents with pain out of proportion. the skin might look okay, it might look just a bit red, but deep inside there is a purulent pathology going on. It is a surgical emergency. Erythema multiforme refers to bullseye or target lesions, and it represents herpes simplex viral infection or mycoplasma infection or drug trigger. Have a look through this slide. And just have a look. Okay, everything looks fine. Ten days after starting lamotrigine, a patient develops a painful widespread rash with blisters, mucosal ulceration of lip and eyes, and a positive Nikolsky sign. What is the treatment of choice? It is drug-induced SJS or 10. The treatment is with immediate withdrawal of the culprit drug and treating it like a burn. Topical steroids or antihistaminics are not adequate. They are used in allergies. This is a dermatological emergency. Nikolsky sign refers to shearing or tearing of the skin when lateral pressure is applied. Now, coming to signs of systemic disease in dermatology, erythema nodosum, painful skin lesions common on the shin of the legs. It is seen in sarcoidosis, inflammatory bowel disease, infections like streptococcal or tuberculous infection, and drug-induced. Pyoderma gangrenosum, for MRCP point of view, remember only IBD and rheumatoid arthritis. Dermatitis herpetiformis, ideally seen in the extensor surfaces of the upper limb, typically the elbow, in celiac disease, and the treatment is with gluten-free diet and dapsone. Necrobiosis lipoidica and acanthosis nigricans are typical of diabetes and insulin resistance or GI malignancy. Erythema multiforme come in herpes simplex virus, mycoplasma, and drugs. So remember, tender shin nodules are erythema nodosum, and you have to evaluate for sarcoid, inflammatory bowel disease, or streptococcal infection. An intensely itchy vesicular rash on extensor surfaces refers to dermatitis herpetiformis, and you screen this patient for celiac disease. A 28-year-old develops tender, raised red nodules on both the shins. She has dry cough. Chest X-ray shows bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy. What is the diagnosis? Very clear. It is erythema nodosum due to sarcoidosis. Tender shin nodules with bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy is Löfgren syndrome. And you need to treat the underlying cause. Underlying cause of erythema nodosum here is sarcoid. It could be TB, it could be drug, it could be idiopathic. Coming to skin cancer and common conditions, where, in MRCP they usually ask about melanoma, basal cell carcinoma, psoriasis. Okay. Melanoma, you have to see if there is an urgency, any life-threatening metastasis has happened, or whether it can be waited and evaluated stepwise. So depending on the clinical scenario. Basal cell carcinoma, it is a poorly rolled edge tumor, very common on the face, at the level of ala nasal, lateral to the ala nasal. It can present as a telangiectasia also. Squamous cell carcinoma presents as keratotic ulcerated lesion, and it is highly metastatic. The underlying cause is sun exposure or even immunosuppression. Psoriasis and eczema. Psoriasis is immune mediated. Eczema has multiple causes. Chronic plaque psoriasis has to be differentiated from a flexural itch. It is treated with topical therapies. It could be topical steroid or other therapies we will discuss, phototherapy as well as biologics if uncontrolled. Bullous diseases like pemphigus vulgaris or bullous pemphigoid. The easiest differentiating factor is pemphigus vulgaris involves mucous membrane. Pemphigoid does not involve mucous membrane. Pemphigus vulgaris is intraepidermal with Nikolsky sign positive. Pemphigoid is subepidermal and the bullae are dense. Remember, a changing pigmented lesion which has asymmetrical borders, dark in color, with irregular diameter and enlarging in size has to be referred for melanoma urgently. An elderly man has a slowly growing facial lesion with polyrolled edge and an overlying telangiectasia. It occasionally bleeds, but it has not spread. It is a basal cell carcinoma. Very clear. The treatment is by excision because it has local invasion. It does not metastasize regularly. 60-year-old notices a pigmented lesion which has enlarged, developed an irregular border, and is variable in color. It has recently bled. Dermoscopy raises concern. Now, what is the concern? God knows. What do you do here? We will not reassure because there is a suspicion of melanoma. We refer the patient. In skin, if there is presence of asymmetry, irregular border, variation of color, altering diameter with bleeding, urgent specialist referral is required. Excision biopsy, which means the whole lesion is removed and sent for biopsy, and Breslau's thickness score is applied to identify the extent of melanoma involvement and the histopathological type of melanoma. Do not do cryotherapy if there is a possible melanoma, or we don't partially sample it. Why? Because intervening a malignant lesion can hasten the process of invasion and metastasis. An elderly patient develops large, tense, itchy blisters on the limbs and trunk. The mucosa is spared. Nikolsky sign is negative. This is bullous pemphigoid. They are tense subepidermal blisters. Mucosa is spared. Nikolsky is negative. Pemphigus vulgaris gives flaccid blisters with mucosal involvement. Let's move to rheumatology. It is a very interesting topic. And I believe it is an easy topic also in the exam because the scenario directly points towards diagnosis and predominantly involves females. Rheumatology refers to musculoskeletal disease, so we evaluate the pattern of joint involvement, whether monoarthritis, oligoarthritis or polyarthritis, whether there is symmetrical joint involvement, whether the axial joint is predominantly involved or peripheral joint is predominantly involved. You need to identify if it is inflammatory or mechanical. How? Morning stiffness lasting for more than 30 minutes and improvement with use of the joint suggests inflammation. So if the patient wakes up with stiff swollen joints and doing activity around the joint improves the feeling of fullness or the feeling of pain, it is inflammatory arthritis. Autoantibodies can directly be linked to the diseases. If it is a hot joint, you need to aspirate it in order to exclude septic arthritis. Remember, all aspirations are done under ultrasound guidance. Try to identify if there is a systemic or multisystem disease where the skin, kidney, lung, eye is involved. Rheumatological diseases can involve the CNS, the cardiovascular system, the GI system as well. In short, we will see the important connective tissue diseases. SLE is a multisystem disease with ANA test being highly sensitive. Anti-dsDNA or anti-Smith are specific. dsDNA with low complement is used to track the disease activity. Rheumatoid arthritis, it is a symmetrical small and large joint involvement. Anti-CCP has a high sensitivity and specificity. Treatment is with early DMARDs. Scleroderma, as the name suggests, thickening of the skin. There are two types of antibodies. Anti-SCL70, which is systemic sclerosis. Anti-centromere, which is limited systemic or even in CREST. Sjogren's, anti-Ro, anti-LAR, the antibodies, and it presents with dry eyes and dry mouth due to sclerosis of the glands. Myositis presents with proximal weakness, raised creatine kinase. Anti-Jo1 is for polymyositis. This is a chart form of the diseases that we just studied. ANCA, anti-dsDNA and anti-SM are specific for SLE, anti-CCP is for RA. So when the clinical scenario is pointing out towards RA, before choosing rheumatoid factor, you have to choose anti-CCP. A rising anti-dsDNA with falling complement indicates there is an active lupus and there could be a flare. Okay, ANCA is also an autoimmune condition. C ANCA and P ANCA, anti-neutrophilic cytoplasmic antibodies. If it is granulomatosis with polyangiitis, microscopic polyangiitis, eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis. 26-year-old woman with malar rash, arthralgia, oral ulcers, proteinuria, and pleuritic pain. ANA is positive. Anti-dsDNA is high and complement is low. It indicates clearly SLE. There are multi-system features with high dsDNA, low complement, and suggesting active SLE. Because of proteinuria, there is lupus nephritis. That is, lupus has involved the kidneys. In such cases, you assess the organ involvement and immunosuppression is required. And this immunosuppression, what drug has to be used, is guided by severity of the disease. Coming to vasculitis. Vasculitis refers to inflammation of blood vessel. Giant cell arthritis, you have to give steroid before biopsy. We are referring to temporal arthritis, right? Because it's a life-threatening or a vision-threatening disease. Another one is Takayasu arteritis, involving the large branches of aorta. Medium vessel polyarteritis nodosa, that is PAN, associated with hepatitis B, hepatitis C, as well as Kawasaki disease. This is seen in pediatrics, so that's expected in our exam. Small vessel vasculitis, ANCA, granulomatosis with polyangiitis, Remember, granuloma formation can occur in the upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. And this is associated with C-ANCA and proteinase 3 antibodies. Then myeloperoxidase antibody and eosinophilic granulomatosis. It is associated with P-ANCA. This is microscopic polyangiitis and eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis. These are associated with P-ANCA and myeloperoxidase antibody. Pulmonary renal syndrome. You will have a scenario where there is hemoptysis, AKI, ANCA positivity, and this has to be treated with urgent immunosuppression because it indicates a flare. Henoch-Schönlein purpura. Remember, this usually comes in young boys. Young boys means between 15 to 25 years or 15 to 30 years you can take for our examination purpose. It presents with palpable purpura, arthralgia, abdominal pain and nephritis. And IgA vasculitis occurs after 1 to 2 weeks of an infection. Remember, between 15 to 30 years, young boys, and in exams they will usually give a scenario where there is a palpable purpura on the thigh. It will always be a scenario where there is palpable purpura on the thigh. There is a poll here, presence of sinusitis indicating upper respiratory tract, hemoptysis indicating lower respiratory tract, glomerulonephritis, and C-ANCA. It is granulomatosis with polyangiitis, which is a pulmonary renal syndrome. So whenever there is an acute involvement, sudden onset in the patient, the treatment starts with steroid. A 55-year-old has chronic sinusitis with nasal crusting, hemoptysis, and a rising creatinine with hematuria and red cell cancers. C-ANCA is positive. What is the condition? Crusting is granuloma formation, upper respiratory tract is involved, so this is granulomatosis with polyangiitis. Treatment is with urgent immunosuppression with steroids and cyclophosphamide with rituximab. Coming to crystal and septic arthritis. Questions from this are less common, but you should know because they can come and they are scoring points. Septic arthritis will be an angry, hot, thick joint. You first aspirate and start empirical antibiotics and treat it with joint washout. So you just refer to the orthopedician. Gout. Again, it can present as a thick, hot joint, but aspiration will show negatively birefringent crystals and serum uric acid will be high. So the first line treatment is with a NSAID followed by colchicine or steroid. Acute management is with NSAID, colchicine and steroid. Later on, urate lowering drugs are given. Pseudogout is treated with positively birefringent rhomboid crystals and this is calcium pyrophosphate crystal. Do not start allopurinol during a gout attack. Why? Because it dislodges the settled uric acid crystals. Rare deflects in arthritis are when there is involvement of a prosthetic joint. Why? Because the patient has spent so much for joint replacement. Then immunosuppression. Chemotherapy or transplant, the patient is highly susceptible to septic arthritis and a rapid systemic upset. So in acute hot joint, remember septic, gouty and pseudogout arthritis. Septic arthritis treatment is removal of the pus. Gout, immediate NSAID to suppress inflammation. Pseudogout, again immediate NSAID to reduce the inflammation. Always aspirate a hot swollen joint to exclude septic arthritis. Negatively birefringent needle-shaped crystals is gout. Positively birefringent rhomboid crystals are pseudocount. A 68-year-old presents with single acutely hot, swollen, exquisitely tender knee, fever, and feeling unwell. He has no prior joint disease. What is the treatment? This is clearly septic arthritis. So what we do here? We aspirate the joint before antibiotics. Never start allopurinol in acute attack and do not assume gout without excluding sepsis. Now in exam, if they give you a scenario where the patient has nodules beneath the skin or white crystal nodules with the skin seen over the skin, or which can be seen over bony surface, because it is a extra-articular crystal deposition. Okay, so that is a direct diagnosis of gout, and there you directly give intravenous NSAIDs or steroids. Hot joint, aspirate first. Anti-dsDNA or anti-SM is SLE, anti-CCP is rheumatoid arthritis. Lung kidney involvement with ANCA, it is small vessel vasculitis. Giant cell arthritis, you give steroid before biopsy. I am referring this to temporal arthritis because ophthalmic artery can be immediately involved, leading to permanent blindness. Gout, negative birefringent crystals, no allopurinol accurately. 45-year-old woman has 3 months of symmetrical pain and swelling of small joint of hand and wrist with early morning stiffness lasting for 2 hours. Anti-CCP is positive and there are early erosions on X-ray. The diagnosis is clearly rheumatoid arthritis. It is a disease of middle age. Remember, osteoarthritis is mechanical and there is no morning stiffness. There can be a misleading statement in the scenario where less than 30 minutes of morning stiffness. They might give a middle-aged lady with morning stiffness, but it does not last for even 30 minutes. And RA factor can be positive. RA is RF, rheumatoid arthritis factor. RF protein is a normal protein as well. So with increasing age, the RF levels also increase. So that does not indicate rheumatoid arthritis. Anti-CCP with raised CRP indicates active rheumatoid arthritis. A 72-year-old has bilateral shoulder and hip girdle pain and stiffness, which is worse in the morning with a raised ESM. She also reports a new temporal headache and jaw discomfort on chewing. Jaw discomfort on chewing, this indicates jaw claudication. So what is the diagnosis here? Clearly polymyalgia rheumatica. Polymyalgia rheumatica typically presents in female with proximal girdles, the shoulder or hip girdle involvement with temporal arthritis association. So high dose steroid is the treatment here before any diagnosis. Girdle pain with stiffness, raised ESR indicates polymyalgia rheumatica. New temporal headache with jaw claudication indicates giant cell arthritis, and start steroid immediately. Polymyalgia rheumatica responds rapidly to low dose steroid. Giant cell arthritis needs high dose steroid followed by biopsy for confirmation of giant cell temporal arthritis. Coming to the summarization of today's session. Never attribute iron deficiency to diet in elderly. Transfuse platelets routinely in TTP. Sedate delirium before seeking the cause, otherwise the patient is at a risk of trauma. Give antipsychotics in Lewy body. Never give antipsychotics in Lewy body dementia. Continue the drug in SGS or TN, never do this. Start allopurinol during acute gout, never do this. What do? You investigate the GI tract for malignancy when there is iron deficiency anemia. Arrange urgent plasma exchange when there is TTP. If you transfuse platelet, the new platelets will also break down. Do not sedate in delirium. Instead, identify the trigger. It could be a surgery. It could be a constipation. It could be urinary retention. It could be emotional trigger. Antipsychotics should not be given in Lewy body dementia. Always stop the culprit drug in SGS or 10 and aspirate a hot joint. This hot joint could be gout, pseudo-gout or septic. Microcytic anemia with low ferritin in elderly, investigate GI tract. Replace B12 before folate. Microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, low platelet, neurological symptoms with AKI indicates TTP clearly. The treatment is plasma exchange. No platelet transfusion, no steroid. Even if the platelet is 10-15,000, immediately go for plasma exchange. Crab with paraprotein with lytic lesion indicates myeloma. Acute fluctuating confusion indicates delirium and you treat the cause. Postural drop with culprit drugs rationalize polypharmacy. Fluctuation of cognition, hallucination, Parkinsonism indicates Lewy body dementia. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome commonly occurs due to dopamine antagonists, presents with rigidity and raised creatine kinase. Fever can be present. Serotonin syndrome is due to serotonergic drugs, that is SSRIs, with presents with clonus. Drug rash with mucosal involvement and pain in the skin, consider SGS or 10. Poly rolled edge. In exam, you will get this word, poly rolled edge. It comes with telangiectasia and refers to basal cell carcinoma. Anti-dsDNA with low complement indicates active SLE. Sinus involvement with pulmonary renal involvement with C-AMCA positive, clearly granulomatosis with polyangiitis. Hot joint, aspirate first. Spherocytes with positive direct antibody testing, it is autoimmune hemolysis. Schistocytes or white cells, it is in microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, which could be TTP, hemolytic uremic syndrome, or DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. DIC is a disorder of clotting. This occurs because of overconsumption of clotting factors and it presents with prolonged clotting time and low fibrinogen level. Hodgkin disease presents with Reed-Sternberg cells, that is owl eye cells, and has alcohol-induced pain. Individual presenting with collapse and ejection murmur look for aortic stenosis. Normal pressure hydrocephalus, there is triad of gait disturbance, that is ataxia, urinary incontinence, and cognition impairment or dementia. D prescribe with stop and start. This is about management of polypharmacy. Erythema nodosum treats sarcoidosis, IBD or streptococcal infection. Dermatitis herpetiformis, you have to treat celiac disease. Pyoderma gangrenosa refer to IBD or rheumatoid arthritis. Anti-SCL70 or centromeric antibody refers to scleroderma. Anti-Jovan, myositis with interstitial lung disease. One more disease, dermatomyositis presents with anti-MI2 antibody. Polyarthritis nodosa associated with hepatitis B. Phenolphthalein purpura associated with IgA nephropathy. Gout, you don't give allopurinol in the first 2 weeks. Now again, same things have been put up in the form of a chart in order to give you a spot diagnosis. You can screenshot this. These are the references, the sources that we took for today's session. These are our upcoming events. We welcome all of you to be a part of StudyMedic. We have hundreds of students with us for part 1, part 2, as well as spaces. There are going to be multiple online free sessions. We would be happy to have you on board whenever this has been announced. Please follow us on social media. And there is a joining form put up in the chat. You will always put your queries over there. There will be a feedback form sent to you. I would appreciate if that has been answered. Please note down our email ID and you can put any doubts over there. It could be related to the subject. It could be related to the exam. It could be related to the academic activities that we are performing at StudyMedic. Tomorrow, the exam window for applications is opening, and we will be live for our enrolled students for support throughout the application process. So hope to see you soon. Thank you for today.